Welcome to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and this is the Friday edition. Basically, week ending October the 16th. I want to do a little bit of preview here, go over a couple of things that are in the news. Most namely, still no numbers out on the Floyd Mayweather-Victor Ortiz pay-per-view buys. Steve Kim, as most of you have recognized, speculated that it was going to be as low as 850,000 buys, which, if that is the case, that's still a darn good sell on Mayweather's part, because outside us hardcore boxing fans and even enthusiastic boxing aficionados, nobody really knows who Victor Ortiz is. It's not like Ricky Hatton having a monster following from Britain and even being showcased here in the United States, although outside hardcore boxing fans in the United States, not too many people knew who Ricky Hatton was. But so if the number is in that neighborhood of 800,000 and up, I'd say it was a success. If the number is in the 400,000s, which I highly doubt, but some of you are going to say, where the hell do you get off thinking Money Mayweather would sell only 400,000? Well, look at his first three pay-per-view showings. Arturo Gatti, who had a huge following in the United States and New Jersey, Zab Judah, who has a huge following in New York City, and Carlos Baldomir, who has no following at all, pretty much on the same on par with Victor Ortiz, although Victor Ortiz had more HBO exposure than Carlos Baldomir. All those fights sold putridly, but things have changed, as most of you have known, and Mayweather has grown into a lot bigger star. He was on Dancing with the Stars. He's been out there. He hangs with some Hollywood A-list groups. He hangs with 50 Cent and all that stuff. So he's out there, and like I said, would I be surprised if it only sold 500,000 or less? No. Would I be surprised if it sold 850,000? No. I'd be surprised if it sold somewhere north of 1.2 million, though. That would surprise me for a couple of reasons. One, the state of the economy. Two, the fact that they bumped the regular price of this up to what high definition used to cost, which is $59.95, and on top of that, Victor Ortiz's lack of notoriety outside of boxing circles. Other little news: Vladimir Klitschko is to fight Jean-Marc Mormek in a terrible mismatch on December 10th. Tommy Hearns is going to be leading the Hall of Fame ballot this coming or next summer in 2012, in his first year of eligibility. Also on the ballot, Freddie Roach is going to be inducted, not for his boxing prowess, mind you, because I saw him fight many times on ESPN, but for on the non-participant ballot. Also, longtime ESPN and Showtime broadcaster Al Bernstein is also on the ballot in the observer category for the first time. I'm trying to think of who else is getting in for boxers. I was just looking at this before. Hearns. Oh, Mark Too Sharp Johnson, the former flyweight and former super flyweight titleist, ended his career with a record of 44-5 and 28 knockouts. Really, top 10 pound-for-pound fighter back in the late 90s, middle to late 90s. Will be getting in as well. Poland's Dariusz Michalczewski, who ended his career 48-2 with 38 knockouts. Fought most of his career in Germany, as most of you know, and he is more famous for having not fought Roy Jones than anything else that he accomplished. One of Poland's best boxers, aside from Tomasz Adamek and Andrew Golota, recently anyway. He will be getting inducted. Who else? The rest of the field is made up. Modern fighters. Now here's something interesting. The rest of the field on the ballot for modern fighters, meaning that their last bout was no earlier than 1943, are holdovers from the previous year, which means they haven't made it. This is again on the ballot where they've got to be voted on. This is interesting. Former featherweight champion Prince Nassim Hamed has been eligible since 2006, I believe, and is a holdover. He has not made it into the Hall of Fame by the writers. I'm going to get back to this. Donald Curry, former welterweight and junior middleweight champion Donald Curry, and super middleweight titleist Sven Otke as well as 3 division titleist Wilfredo Vasquez. Now I got to ask myself something. How does Mark Too Sharp Johnson get into the Hall of Fame, and somebody like Prince Nassim Hamed, who only lost 1 fight in his career, was basically the undisputed featherweight champion of the world, not get in? Or Donald Curry also, who was an undisputed welterweight champion, and Wilfredo Vasquez, who legitimately won titles in 2 of the original 8 weight classes and the 3rd title in one of the in-between ones, and defended each title a few times. I don't get this. Sven Otke, again, he's fought in the newer division, which was the 168-pound division, and had a lot of controversial decisions and things happening in his fights in Germany with officiating and stuff like that. He didn't get much exposure worldwide, but as far as Hamed, Curry, and Wilfredo Vasquez, I'm not seeing how Mark Too Sharp Johnson gets in and these guys don't. I argue with people all the time about baseball, whether argument of whether Pete Rose deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or not, and they're holding him out of the Hall of Fame because he's banned from baseball for actions after he was a player. But it doesn't change the fact that he has more hits than any other person, clean. All right, more hits than any other human being in Major League Baseball. Yet his out of baseball activity is keeping him out of the Hall of Fame. I don't understand the writers in this situation who vote on this, but that's neither here nor there. Also, Michael Buffer is getting in for just saying, let's get ready to rumble. I hope he doesn't sue me because I just said that. That's a joke, people. I'm looking also on here. Also, German promoter Klaus-Peter Kohl, who founded Universum, is getting into the Hall of Fame as well. And he promoted Mikkel Sheski as well as the Klitschko's at one time or another. And that's going to about do it for that little story about the Hall of Fame. I usually don't pay that much attention to it because I heard, I think Above Beneath went there and said it was a waste of time, or I shouldn't say a waste of time, it was just tiny compared to what he imagined it. Either he or if it was somebody did on my channel. I just remember a few months ago writing about that. Thanks for actually letting us know about that too. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is going to defend his title against Peter Manfredo Jr., which I find odd because I don't think Peter Manfredo Jr. has fought at 154 pounds in a long time. November 19th, and I'm sure it's going to be on at the Reliant Arena in Houston is where this is going to be on Boxing After Dark. Well, actually, I take that back. There is 160 pound belt. I keep getting Chavez Jr. mixed up with Canelo. And I can't keep up with either one of them. What fights are on, what fights are off, this and that, blah, 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 blah. Mikkel Kessler hurt his hand, and his unification bout with Robert Stieglitz has been postponed. We already talked about, I guess, Kimbo Slice. Oh, here's an interesting one. Timothy Bradley signed a deal with Top Rank, and he's going to be fighting Joel Casamayor. Now, this is another situation where Gary Shaw and I don't know if it's who the other promoter is, are claiming that they still have Bradley under contract. And as you all have all known, I have taken a liking to Bradley and I have defended him in the past. As more and more of this story comes out, I'm beginning to think to myself, something is not right here. And as this story reads, Bradley, once he defeated Devin Alexander in the unification bout in Detroit, that terrible fight in January, HBO had options on both fighters to give them a guaranteed, I think, $1.3 or $1.4 million payday for either a rematch or separate fights. And Devin Alexander jumped on this deal and got a hometown fight and a hometown decision over Walter Matthijs. Now, that same money was guaranteed to Bradley to take on Amir Khan. And they had a date set up for July something, and Bradley was sticking hard and fast to he wanted to fight before June 30th. Well, let's take a look at what's happened. Has he gotten in the ring before June 30th? We're now sitting in the middle of October, and he still hasn't fought again. So the answer is no. Amir Khan and Golden Boy, much to their credit, you'll very rarely hear me say this, but much to their credit, offered Bradley a 50-50 split in the purse, which would have gotten him slightly more than the 1.4 million from what I understand. And it was Bradley himself that turned this down. Now, some of you might say, well, what's the situation with this? His contract expired at the end of June with Gary Shaw, and I'm trying to think of who the other guy's name is. Not one that's usually in the news that much. In any event, this article's not up there anymore that I was reading. The reason and the situation with this with Bradley is that he signed with Top Rank. He's going to be fighting Casamayor. There's rumors that he's basically being groomed to be a future Pacquiao opponent. He has come out and said no such promises have been made to him, even though he's going to be fighting, I think, on... I'm not sure if they're fighting on the same card as Pacquiao. The article's not there anymore. But regardless, I think it's a good move for Bradley in the sense that he will get better exposure, which is what he wants, and he said he wants to be promoted better. I think it was a bad move to turn down the Khan fight, because in my opinion, this is just my amateur opinion, the longer that fight takes to be made, the more confident and the more sturdy and the more solid and the better rounded Amir Khan gets. As time goes on, Timothy Bradley is a fantastic little boxer, puncher, fighter, infighter. Uses, he's basically almost reminds me a lot of a guy that used to fight in the featherweight division. That his nickname was Little Haggler, but he was a southpaw, and he was very good at a lot of things, but a good boxer was able to undo him, which was what Derek Gainer did. I'm trying to think what the heck that guy's name was. I can't... Stevie something? No, it wasn't Stevie Johnson. That was lightweight. I don't know. I'll remember it. But anyway, he held the WBA featherweight title briefly. He had beaten, I think, Antonio Cermeno twice. And he, in any event, though, what I'm trying to say is, the longer this fight takes to be made, the worse it is for Bradley. Because I don't think Bradley's getting appreciably better at what he does, where Amir Khan is getting better. And I had an argument with a few of, this is the question of the week. I think it was Truth Be Power or Truth for Power on one of the videos. I asked this question point blank, because he is adamant about Manny Pacquiao being juiced on something. And he also says now that Amir Khan is on the juice, and that there's a difference between his fight with McCloskey over in England and his fight with Zab Judah. That he was sturdier, bigger, this and that. And I said, "Are you trying?" My question to him posed in print was, "Are you trying to tell me that Alex Ariza is juicing Freddie Roach's fighters?" And he responded, "Yes." How many of you agree with that? Because I, for one, think it's a bunch of horse shit, is what I think it is. These Mayweather Kool-Aid drinkers, these Flomos, they will say anything to defend that guy for this BS. Understand that I'm not saying Pacquiao or anybody else is above suspicion. I believe there is a right to be, but I also believe, take it up with the commissioners of whatever state, the Nevada State Commission, take it up with the sanctioning bodies, that there's a suspicion, this should be looked into. Because what people don't realize is that every time a boxer has to renew their license every year, they have to give blood. Now, albeit they know months ahead of time when they're going to have to do this, but it's not like everybody gets their license renewed on January 1st of every year. It's at different times of the year, and usually sometimes it's around the time of a fight. So I mean, it'd be pretty hard to get on and off of. I know some of you bodybuilder types say, no, you can get off HGH for 6 weeks and then go be clean, go take your test and get right back on it and start training again. And some of you are saying, it's not the worry of Pacquiao or anybody else being on human growth hormones during the fight. It's during their training to be able to condition their body to be able to take more. Listen, this argument about Pacquiao coming from basically a junior featherweight and a junior lightweight where he's getting hit by Marquez and being driven back 5 feet. Listen, that's revisionist history. It never happened. Did he get his head snapped back by Marquez? Yes, but he was never driven back 5 feet. So stop typing, turn your volume down, everybody. Stop typing bullshit on my comments. Because if you're going to get into a long, drawn-out argument with me about this kind of crap, and you're just going to make stuff up, I'm just going to start blocking people. As you already know, only certain people have rights to make channel comments. I'm going to extend that to certain people having rights to basically make video comments because you're going to make up nonsense. No, you point out a time and a place in either one of the two Pacquiao-Marquez fights in which Pacquiao was driven back 5 feet from a right hand. There is no time, so don't even type nonsense on my videos. All right, now that I have that on my system, David Hay kept his promise as he retires on his 31st birthday. Good riddance to you. Have a happy life. Go back to modeling. You cashed in, now you're gone. You laid an egg. Go cook some now. See you later. Smell you later. HBO Sports hires Ken Hirschman from Showtime. I guess to kind of better budget for some of their crappy scheduling they've had. Good move for them. All right. Let's get into the schedule for this week in the preview, because there are a couple of things on that I haven't done my homework on. For instance, tonight in Buenos Aires, Argentina, there's a rematch between Jonathan Barros and Celestine Caballero for the regular WBA featherweight title. Which I get. What the hell's regular? Isn't Chris John the regular champion? And what belt did Gamboa have? I mean, what? Who cares? It's basically a 12-round fight. That's all you need to know. And this is why we need to go back to 15-round fights, so all these junior titles could just melt together and nobody will care about it. The first fight, I could swear when I watched that, after it happened, of course, that Caballero got robbed in Argentina. Not big robbed, but kind of like Bradis Prescott got robbed against McCloskey. And they're fighting again in Argentina. I would think Caballero, from what I've seen, Caballero is the better fighter of the two. If he comes in motivated, which I'm sure he will after trying to avenge a loss, he should win this fight. What else is going on? Today, nothing really important. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. In Liverpool, England, Nathan Cleverly taking on Tony Bellew. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these names right. Belleu. Bellew. For Cleverly's WBO light heavyweight title. The pick here would be Cleverly. He's a pretty solid fighter. I haven't seen too much footage of him, but I think he should take care of business. Also in a semifinal there for the European super middleweight title, Piotr Wilczewski, I believe he's from Poland, is taking on James DeGale, coming off his loss earlier this year. It's a toss-up. I'm kind of surprised about this because I think Wilczewski's got a little bit too much experience with DeGale, but DeGale's prowess and his skills offset that. I think it's a toss-up. You tell me what you think. I have not done my homework on this one like I should have. So I just want to let you know that's out there, and we'll maybe talk about it in the recap show. Kimbo Slice is fighting in Grand Island, Nebraska in a 4-round fight. I think they ought to get Kimbo Slice to fight against Butterbean is what I think they should do, because Butterbean was the king of the 4-rounders. And I think they ought to get Butterbean versus Kimbo Slice. Hey, I'm going to be a promoter now, everybody. Just kidding. And also, that's it. Oh, tomorrow night in Los Angeles on HBO pay-per-view, a couple of good fights on this card. Paulie Malignaggi's taking on Orlando Lara in a 10-round welterweight fight. Malignaggi should win that by a clear-cut decision, I would think. Kendall Holt's fighting Danny Garcia. This is a very interesting fight because Kendall Holt is basically this fight away from being back in the 140-pound sweepstakes. But Danny Garcia is a pretty good guy. These are hard fights to call, some of them. On experience, I'm leaning towards Holt. On just raw hunger and maybe current talent, I lean towards Garcia. It's going to be a tough fight. It's an eliminator for a shot at the WBC IBF titles. And then a fight that is very intriguing for me. Antonio DeMarco versus Jorge Linares at lightweight for the vacant WBC lightweight title. I guess this is, what's his name's title? where the heck these names are escaping me. Valero. I should just think of the gas station, right? Because they're popping up all over in Georgia now, the Valero gas stations. Valero's title. DeMarco was stopped by Valero. Linares, here's the thing. Skill, Linares. Will, DeMarco. It's where those two roads intersect which is going to determine the winner, because if DeMarco's will and conditioning and training and just his durability, he's very big for lightweight. Remember, Linares is moving up from featherweight essentially. If Linares is not on his game, DeMarco has a very good chance of winning this fight. If Linares is on his game, he should pick apart DeMarco. There's no two ways about it. Since Linares was knocked out in the first round over in Japan and loses junior lightweight title, he's looked very sharp, especially against Rocky. Am I getting Alzheimer's? I don't know what the heck's going on with me. Why I can't remember these names all of a sudden. And I'm not doing this with paper in front of me. Anyway, against Rocky, what's his name? Rocky Juarez. A few fights ago, in which he looked very sharp in that fight. He's he's the first fighter I've ever seen get Juarez off his feet legitimately and winning a lopsided decision. I'm going with Linares in this fight, although I wouldn't be surprised if DeMarco pulls off the upset. In the main event, Bernard Hopkins versus Chad Dawson. 12 rounds for the Ring Magazine, the WBC light heavyweight title, basically the linear title in this division. This is a tough fight to call, and here's my reasoning behind this. One would think, under normal circumstances, the younger, stronger fighter, and I'm not even so stronger, but younger, fresher fighter in Dawson should win this fight, like he did against Tarver. But here's the problem. Bernard Hopkins is a puzzle solver, and he's a puzzle maker. He will solve your puzzle, and you won't solve his, if he's very apt to do that. Here's the one drawback I see for Bernard Hopkins. At his age, impressive performances are hard to string together consistently. Believe me, I'm finding this out the hard way on the tennis court, because I know I can when I'm playing guys I would have beaten 5 or 10 years ago, and I see the openings and just hesitate for 1 second, I mean, the window closes. And it's the same thing with these guys. You can look great one day when you're in your 40s, and then just all of a sudden, be flat the next. And the one thing that worries me about Hopkins is that he has fought. This is going to be his 3rd fight within 10 months? Yeah, dating back to December of last year, because he fought Pascal twice and now Dawson. 3 fights in 10 months. That's a little more than 3 months in between each fight. He hasn't fought on this schedule in a long time, and I'm wondering, I know he stays in fantastic shape between fights. That is one of the things that makes him as great as he is. But the thing is, I don't know that the amount of activity that is being heaped upon him, he's going to be able to sustain it. The X's and O's, it's real simple. I mean, Dawson's going to try to establish his jab and try to establish a working distance and establish moving to his right. Hopkins is going to force feed him lead right hands like he tried to do to Joe Calzaghe. The difference here is that Joe Calzaghe is a lot more aggressive and craftier than Chad Dawson is. Chad Dawson in the past has shown that he's almost disinterested in fighting. And the only thing that I'd go with Dawson now is he's hungry to get his titles back that Pascal got away from him and then gave to Hopkins. And there's also, a lot of times you look at these things and you say, why wouldn't Hopkins fight Chad Dawson when he had the titles, but he loses to Pascal, and then he jumps on the opportunity of fighting Pascal because he knew he could beat Pascal. And Dawson has been shooting off the mouth saying that the only reason why Hopkins is fighting this fight now is because he's contractually obligated to. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. It's not that Hopkins is afraid of him or Hopkins can't solve his puzzle. He can. The amount of, and this is a guy I used to work with a long time ago at General Electric that used to say this, is the juice worth the squeeze? Bernard Hopkins is going to have to squeeze really hard to win this fight. And if given the choice to not take it or take it, I think I would walk away from it. Because it's not that Hopkins can't beat Dawson, he can. It's how much effort is his 46-year-old body going to have to put in to do it. He put a lot of effort into beating Pascal, because for the first 4 rounds of that first fight, it looked like Hopkins had grown old overnight and Pascal's energy was going to just wash him away. but he upped his energy level to something fierce over the last 8 rounds of that fight, which I thought he won both fights, don't get me wrong. And the second fight, I just find it hard to believe that for 3 fights in a row he's going to be able to work and maintain that level. I say it's a pick 'em fight. I really do. I don't, as usual, I would not guess that this fight's going to end by a stoppage. A technical decision maybe, but not a stoppage. And I would look, Hopkins is going to make this as nasty and as dirty as he can make it. If he can't find Dawson with lead right hands, Dawson, if he can't establish his jab or find a lead left hand, basically it's Control-Alt-Delete on his computer. So it could. I don't expect this to be a very exciting fight. I expect it to be a chess match, and I don't know who's going to win. I'm not even leaning one way or the other because I think that the variables on both sides are incredible. Hopkins is not going to be steamrolled by anybody. Let me just be clear about that. If he is, I'll be totally shocked and admit I was wrong on the next video. So, and Dawson's not the kind of guy that's going to go steamrolling people either. So this is going to be nip and tuck like the Pascal fight the first time around. If the thing is with Dawson, I think you've got to be a little bit dirty to beat Hopkins, just a tiny bit. He does exactly what you're supposed to do to protect the vital organs, as I would say. His eyes, his nose, his mouth, his chin, the front. If you're going to get him, you got to get him around the side, like the back of the ear, like Pascal did in the first fight when he cuffed him to the ground. That's how you're going to get him. If you're going to get him, you're not going to get him by playing straight up. It just isn't happening. And Dawson, I think, plays too much straight up. Again, I'm leaning towards the fact that Hopkins, the skill set and figuring out the Dawson puzzle and creating a puzzle that Dawson can't solve, I'm leaning that way, but at the same time, to execute at the level Hopkins has been executing at 3 times in 10 months, I find very difficult to digest. I think it's a pick 'em fight. I wouldn't. It'd be very hard to wager on this one because I would think possibly Dawson by decision, possibly Hopkins by decision. Maybe even put $100 down in a draw and make yourself $2,500 or $3,300 because Hopkins fights at this point in time are always draw capable. And I said that in the first fight, as I predicted correctly in the first Pascal fight, that you put some money on a draw and you might be surprised. And what, just like that, it came true. Same thing in this situation. I wouldn't doubt it. That's going to be it for this edition of Boxing Info. Meet you on the flip side with the results. Thanks, everybody.